Today we are going to take a closer look at the MagniumGear Neo Cube 2, and let me tell you, after doing a handful of ultra budget cases in a row, I am surprised how happy I was to actually work with something good again. Cause yes, this thing is freakishly good. But before that, MagniumGear, or MetallicGear, how they used to be called like a couple of weeks ago, they are one of Phanteks' sub-companies directed more towards the mid-tier market, whereas Phanteks tries to stay with the other top dogs. Though the very last word I would use to describe this case would be mid-tier. This is good stuff. That being said, right now there seem to be exactly 3 products on their website. The Neo Cube 2 for today, the Neo Cube Air, and something that looks exactly like one of Phanteks' fans. But clearly it isn't one because the logo in the center. Anyway, the Neo Cube 2 comes in 2 different versions. The difference being that one has a semi-see-through infinity mirror going in the front, whereas the other one, also the one that you are looking at today, has a single ARGB line going from top to bottom on the right side of the front panel, or the tempered glass front side. Extremely clean, not pretentious at all, exactly how I like it. The I/O, which is placed right next to that line, also seems to be exactly how I like it. USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type-C, 2 USB 3.0 Type-A's, a combined audio in and out, a very clicky start button with a little reset button underneath. And of course the mandatory Phanteks D-RGB color and D-RGB mode button, cause if you did not notice that the case is made by Phanteks, you definitely will once you get to the back and you will see all of those weird-ass proprietary connections. But credit where credit is due. The controller inside all of this is powered by SATA, which is good. It is expandable using more Phanteks stuff, and it is expandable with more regular ARGB stuff. And of course it is pass-through controllable via your motherboard software. It is proprietary, but only until the point where you don't want it to be a proprietary anymore, so I'm kind of fine with that. The case comes inside the usual brown carton box with nothing particularly interesting to note about it. Standing on the table, the case measures 450mm in depth, 460 in height and 270 in width. Compared to most cases out there, these are of course not very normal values. But if you haven't noticed it, the Neo Cube follows a similar design approach like the O11 Dynamic. Reposition the PSU behind the motherboard, move everything down, use the forcefully gained space behind the motherboard to add 3 side fans, enjoy cold intake from the bottom and possibly from the side, while the top pushes everything out. Simple, easy and effective enough that this exact design approach has been relevant since it was first introduced. But that's just the ground idea. MagniumGear did bring quite a few own twists to the table, so let's see exactly what this case has to offer. In order to open the case, we do need to do a couple of things a bit differently than we usually do. First, we need to remove the top dust filter by unscrewing the 2 screws in the back and pulling it out. Then we can rinse and repeat the same thing for the metal bracket next to it. And by the way, I have no clue why it's not just like one solid piece. It doesn't strike me as being particularly cost effective to make it 2 pieces. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But once that's done, we can start removing the panels. But unlike we're used to, every metal and glass panel in here is mounted using a slide-in mechanic from the top. So pull it up and take it out, and oh my god, did I enjoy this method. Like, the little hooks are awful, the knobs are not really better, rails are a step forward, but this is an amazing method that doesn't annoy me. It's great. Once all of them are out, we can see the full scope of possibilities that we have inside this thing. For motherboards we can use basically everything we want, mini ITX, micro ATX, regular ATX, and in theory we can also go with eATX according to MagniumGear themselves. Though keep in mind that the last eATX screws are just not present in here, so the right side of the motherboard will just, wiggle around in front of the fans, but it's possible. And there is nothing stopping you from doing it, like the end of the case. There is space for that. Anyway, given the form factor, the case naturally comes with a lot of benefits, like for example GPU support. Using the 9 reattachable brackets, we can hook up to 410mm long cards in here, so 4090s will fit perfectly, which is fine. For CPUs on the other hand, it is Let's say simple. If you have a case that is built like this, take a look at the leftover space where the original exhaust fan would have been. If there is a 120mm fan spot, no problem. If it's an 80mm fan, it's quite a bit of a problem, and if there is no fan, it's a big problem. The space one in the back had to be taken from somewhere, or we would just end up with one giant freaking cube. Up to 148mm high coolers. That's it. The only halfway decent cooler I am aware of that would fit into this is, for example, a Nokia NHD12L. Everything above that, just forget about it. And even that I wouldn't really recommend because it's kind of relying on pushing air through and then out in the back. And if you would turn it, which you can do on Nokia coolers, on Intel at least, you would just suck the hot air that is like above the GPU, which also wouldn't make a lot of sense, so just But some cases are water cooling focused, and in my opinion, this is such a case. But first, fans. The iconic side fans coming from this form factor can house up to 3 120mm fans. The bottom and top, being identical, can both house either 2 140mm or 3 120mm fans. And on that note, two things. First off, I love the implementation of the bottom dust filter. I can pull it out. I don't need to like clip it or like pull it down, which my sausage fingers are usually not allowing to do. And here it's just hand underneath, pull. It's so freaking simple. And the second thing, what in the hell are those middle rails for? Like, the inner ones are for 120s, the outer ones are for 140s, and is there like a 130mm mount? Anyway, I would also strongly advise you to stick to only 120mm fans in here. Given that two 140s will not fill the whole top or whole bottom, it just looks either weird and it's not fully utilizing the case's potential. So looking at the whole picture, we are looking at a total of 9 fans. Relatively easy. As far as radiators are concerned, we are looking at the exact same restriction, up to 360 on the top panel, 360 on the side panel, and 360 in the bottom, or 280s in the top and bottom. It's really freaking simple. Of course, every use case under the assumption that you don't push-pull a 60mm radiator and then you will hit either the GPU at one point or from the top the heatsink. It's just, you know, be responsible. So as far as cooling is concerned, for the Neo Cube 2, we are either looking at a maximum Nokia NHD12L or a good 360 rad. No wonder that I will therefore absolutely recommend to use this case solely with water coolers. If you go water, the fan layout is actually really simple. Bottom intake, top exhaust, that's rather easy. And then the fans on the side are either pumping out the cold air coming from the bottom and then it's becoming hot air thanks to the radiator and then out, or it is pumping cold air in through the radiator. Which one is better doesn't really matter at this point, but something that's not up to the user is the amazing GPU cooling that this form factor naturally creates. There being nothing underneath the GPU except for a fresh air intake produces probably the closest result to open air that is even achievable. Plus the case stands on 2 very sturdy feet, creating slightly over 2mm of space, exactly what you would want. With the main aspects covered, the point about the case that really impressed me the most is the back side of the case. On that side we'll find this bracket, which can be removed by unscrewing the 2 top screws. This thing is actually the drive bracket. All in all, there are 5 2.5-inch drive spots on here by directly just screwing the drives onto the bracket. However, 2 of those are also potential 3.5-inch spots marked with either A or B, and yes, you can only use one, you can like reposition it. By using either one of those 2 spots, you can mount up to 2 3.5-inch drives in here, though keep in mind that using these comes at the cost of 2 2.5-inch drive spots. So it's really either 5 SSDs or 3 SSDs and 2 hard drives. Behind that bracket we will also find the PSU placement. This can really be as long as you want. There is no power supply to the best of my knowledge that would exceed the amount of space that you have here. However, there is one restriction coming with the bottom 2 SSD spots. If you use those, it's not over 155 for you. And then as a feature, the mandatory Phanteks dual system setup, because this is still a Phanteks case. If you look closely, there are 4 mini ITX spaced holes around the motherboard area. Using those, and by unscrewing this seemingly random panel on the side, allows us to mount a secondary system in the back. And if the day comes and we get some decent GPUs using low profile PCIe brackets, there are 2 brackets ready to be used. Though I really wouldn't wait for that to happen, just use an iGPU. But still, you can dual system this case as long as you get one of Phanteks' dual system power supplies, which is still pretty damn cool. Each and every case has that. Phanteks is a bit of a fetish for dual system cases. But the Neo Cube 2 has even more really cool features, like for example the fact that the back panel has perforation holes on both ends to accommodate for a top blower cooler on the ITX system, you know, just in case you want to use that, or that Phanteks made sure to leave a ton of space behind the side fan mountings. This space could be used to install a radiator behind the whole motherboard compartment. Although I have to say that, for example, a 360 rad where the tubes are at the very bottom of the edge, it won't fit. Like the physical radiator is hitting something either at the top or at the bottom. So for 360 this will not always work. Maybe for custom rads, I just don't have one at hand. Or for ones where the edges are quite small, there yes. Or just 240s in general, this will work. But something you can do is push-pull, with the fans being outside of the main motherboard compartment, so you can see them, but they are there and they do enhance the performance, or you can reduce the fan speed, thus the noise. So this is really useful. And you will not, you know, stack the radiator to the front where at some point it just looks ugly. No, this is a very interesting use case. Overall, while working with the case, I absolutely did not get the budget feeling that I kinda expected, given that I was working with a off-brand product. Like, there are things that Phanteks usually does not do, but I wouldn't really call them like budget. Like the cable management. Ignoring the awesome look that the fan holes on the side create, there are several more holes around the case, with only the top one having another rubber to protect the cable. That's still up to Phanteks' standard, but the hole right next to the CPU power hole, I just didn't understand. Like, the central one is actually new. Normally it's not there, now it's there, it looks awesome, so I will use it for CPU power, but then what does the other one do? It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not for the fans have another one. The bottom ones are okay, you won't see them anyway with fans installed. No, but the thing that Phanteks would not have done are the cable straps in the back. Every Phanteks case I have worked until now had some sort of rails or hiding piece that hides the cable in some sort, whatever, but never just Velcro ties. So this is not really on Phanteks' level, that's for sure, but this is still plenty to satisfy my cable management needs. And let's be honest, why the f do I need rails? Once I'm done, once I cable strapped everything, I just don't care about the back. So this is really okay. But actually, we are still getting some sort of help with cable management in form of the drive bracket. Now, I do not use any drives, but after removing the pre-installed 3.5-inch bracket, I can still reinstall the bracket itself after the fact, pressing all the cables into the case, making the installation of the back panel significantly easier, because even with the biggest mess, it cannot exceed that bracket. And I can press that bracket in with screws, so that's a really good reason to just put it back in, just for that. So, although this is a off-brand product, this case is still damn good. It has excellent cooling capabilities, and you will find the exact numbers in the building video for this puppy. But overall, you can build damn beautiful and good systems in here. The only thing that I would note about this is that this is clearly a water cooling case. You can do air, you can always do air, but you will never get to the level of a 360mm AIO given the not even 150mm high CPU cooler restriction, and the fact that nothing will like logically function as a good airflow path in here. Like, of course the cooler will push some out by the perforation holes in the back, of course it will, but it will never be at the level where a normal case would be with a fan installed up here. So from our side, absolute recommendation. Performance, build quality, design, compatibility with water coolers, GPU compatibility, it ticks every freaking box except for the air cooler box. But other than that, great. And I am really shocked that I did not find myself with some random copycat of a real Phanteks case. No, this is a perfectly fine independent product ready to use. But okay, this should be it for today's video about the Neo Cube 2. At this point, a huge thank you to MagniumGear, or actually Phanteks. I'm talking to the same guy about those two brands. But thank you to both of those companies for sending it over. But if you want to continue watching, have a look at our take on the Phanteks Anthem case. If you wanted to know how many fans you can squish into a case, well, that case created a maximum. On a side note, we still have a Discord server, and if you want to join, the link is in the description below. Anyway, thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.